welcome today. I have Kate Silva of Beacon Parent Coaching. Thanks for joining me this morning.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, you have a course coming up and it's called?
So the first course that we're offering is called Natural Consequences and help use them for your child to grow optimally.
Yep. Awesome. And how did you get the idea about putting together this course?
So in my work previously with children, I've worked with children for over 20 years in families along with them, and parents are struggling a little bit with how to discipline their children and finding functional, effective means. That is also a way to keep their children's self-respect intact, leading towards that change that they're really looking to see. And they also are struggling with allowing their children to really live through those natural consequences without rescuing them. And I think that's an important topic to cover with parents. It's really beneficial for children to have the results of natural consequences because they learn much quicker and it's a more meaningful experience for them.
Yeah, can you give us like a live example of what a natural consequence is? Like what would be like the sequence of it?
Okay, so for example, if a child goes to elementary school and they forgot their homework home, so that child might go down to the school office and say, "Oh, I forgot my homework. Can you call my mom and have her bring it to school?" So if the mom brings the homework to school, there's no lesson learned for the child in that experience. But if the child has the natural consequence of not having the homework that day, which depending on the teacher, it might be different, but if the child has that, then that's going to resonate with the child, and that child is going to be more responsible in the future to make sure that their homework gets packed in their bag and goes to school with it to pass it in on time.
Gotcha. What about, does this also work in times of like almost when your child is being like defiant? Like how does that work? Like how do you work with parents that are dealing with that?
Yeah, so there's a difference. So there's natural consequences and then there's logical consequences. And we will also talk about that in the workshop that's coming up as well. But logical consequences are imposed by parents, where natural consequences are not. There are consequences children receive without any adult intervention, but the logical consequences can be imposed by the parents. And so they have to be reasonable and they should be related to whatever the act or behavior was that they're trying to shape into a different behavior. They are something that the parent is choosing. So if the child is saying inappropriate words or inappropriate language about someone, a logical consequence could be having them sit down and write that person a letter telling them 3 things they like about them. So there's still a consequence, but it's logical because it's related to the crime. Versus if they come home and they make a big mess and you send them to their room. That's not a logical consequence. That's a punishment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so we're seeing that punishments are not leading to improved behavior. Okay. But natural and logical consequences are very effective means of discipline.
So it's really, it sounds like it's a really powerful way to gently parent your child.
Yes, yeah. It kind of takes the power struggle out and there's none of that back and forth. And it's just kind of like, oh, well, this is what happened, so this is the consequence of your behavior.
Yeah, I have to tell you, looking at, I'm on like a million parenting groups and there's always a power struggle.
Yes.
And it seems like these things are so logical, but they aren't necessarily, they always say there's no training manual for kids. So.
There's no training manual. And when you're emotionally engaged with your child, you're not using the part of your brain that you're using when you're calm and in control.
True.
It can take a lot of self-control on the parent's part to take that breath and to think with your higher functioning part of your brain and think, okay, how am I going to respond here that's going to be appropriate and effective? We want to have boundaries, we want to have consequences, but we don't want to just, respond out of anger and give punishment because then their learning lesson is gone.
Right. Now, what are some outcomes have parents gotten? I know you've led this before. What are some outcomes that you've heard from other parents?
Yeah, so through the workshops and then also through my individual work with clients who I have for parent coaching services, they've seen huge improvement in behavior and just a decrease of the aggression, just kind of the chaos, less yelling, less fighting, less stress in that way because the parents are coming at it with this consistent and united approach that, okay, if you don't do your homework, your consequences, you're not going outside until your homework is done. And that's it. There's no arguing, there's no yelling, there's no fighting. That's just what it is. And then through time, when the child realizes, okay, this is the boundary and it's not moving no matter what I do, then the child's behavior will slowly adapt to that if the motivation of going outside is great enough.
Right. Oh my gosh. It sounds like a miracle class. I actually, I'm putting it in my schedule right now. So
Yeah.
good. Is there anything else you want to share about this course?
I think it's just really the one other piece of advice that I'll offer. I don't want to offer too much outside of the workshop, but another piece is that when parents are engaging with their children, we talk a lot about the importance of parents to not piggyback on a natural consequence. So you don't want to make it worse, right? You don't want to shame them or yell at them or lecture them too long. You know, they have already gotten their consequence from the world. And what we can do, we can still provide support for them. We can still empathize with them. And that way you're still building on your relationship and you're making your connection stronger, which is so important, but you're still not rescuing them from the consequence they received.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this quick 5 minutes.
Sure, I'm happy to.